Nora never planned to stay in Bramble Lane. She only planned to win. The town was the kind of place people drove through, not to. One main road, a handful of small shops, and houses that looked like they had been standing in the same spots for 100 years. Nora did not hate that. Old towns meant old houses, and old houses meant profit if a person knew what to fix and what to hide. Nora knew both. She arrived on a gray morning with a folder full of numbers and a head full of deadlines. She had been doing house flips for 3 years, and she had learned one rule that mattered more than paint colors or cabinet handles. Buy the problem before someone else notices it is worth money. The house on Bramble Lane was a problem. A small 2-story place with a sagging porch, a roof that looked tired, and a yard full of weeds that had claimed the walkway. It belonged to an older man who had moved closer to his daughter in the city. He wanted it gone fast, and Nora wanted it even faster. The price was low enough that it made her feel calm. When she signed the papers, the real estate agent, a thin woman named Leah, smiled like she was trying not to say something. "Good luck," Leah said. Nora tucked the keys into her pocket. "I do not need luck." Leah hesitated. "This street has stories." "Every street does." Leah nodded, but her eyes did not look convinced. "People here, they notice things." Nora gave a polite smile and walked out with the folder under her arm. She did not come here to be noticed. She came to work. That afternoon, Nora opened every window and started making a list. The kitchen needed new counters. The living room floor squeaked like a warning. The upstairs bathroom had stains around the tub. And the basement smelled like wet paper. Normal. She pulled on gloves, tied her hair back, and began ripping out what she could. In her mind, she could already see the finished place. Bright walls, clean lines, a modern look that would make buyers forget the old smell of time. The first 2 days went smoothly. She cleared trash, hauled old furniture to the curb, and sanded down the worst parts of the living room floor. She worked late, eating quick meals from a paper bag and falling asleep on a mattress she had placed in an empty room upstairs. Every hour mattered. Nora had a schedule. She always had a schedule. On the 3rd day, she noticed the draft. It came from the living room, near the corner where the fireplace wall met the window. The windows were old, yes, but the air felt like it was coming from below. Nora crouched down and pressed her palm to the floorboards. Cold. She slid her hand along the baseboard. Nothing looked strange. Still, the air kept moving, like the house was breathing. Nora got a flashlight and lay flat on the floor. She aimed the light into the narrow gap between the boards and the wall. Dust floated in the beam. Then she saw something that did not belong. A thin line, darker than the rest of the wood, like a seam. Nora sat up. "No," she muttered, and smiled despite herself. Hidden spaces were not rare in old houses. Sometimes they held old tools, bottles, coins, letters. Sometimes they held nothing but dust. But they always made buyers curious, and curiosity sold houses. She grabbed a pry bar from her toolbox and returned to the corner. She wedged the bar under a board and pulled. The board lifted with a sharp creak, like it had been waiting years to complain. Nora pulled again, and the nails came free with a dry pop. Beneath the board was a thin layer of dirt, not the expected wooden support. Dirt meant the board was covering a hollow area that had been filled. She pulled up a second board. More dirt. Nora paused. She leaned closer. The dirt looked packed tight, almost pressed by hand. This was not normal. She removed a third board and saw the same. But now the seam line appeared again, not in the wood but in the dirt itself, like a square outline. Her heartbeat sped up, not from fear. From interest. She set the pry bar down and fetched a small shovel. She began to dig carefully, pulling the dirt out in handfuls. It was cool and smelled old, like a basement after rain. After 10 minutes, her shovel hit something hard. Metal. Nora froze for half a second, then scraped the dirt away. A rusted edge emerged. It was flat, like a lid. Her mind ran through possibilities. Old safe. Hidden box. A sealed trapdoor. She brushed more dirt away until a full square outline appeared, about the size of a small table. There was a ring handle, rusted and dark, folded into a metal slot. A trapdoor. Nora stared at it and felt a strange mix of satisfaction and unease. A trapdoor under the living room did not make sense. The house already had a basement. Why would anyone hide another entrance? Still, her hands moved on their own. She hooked her fingers into the ring and pulled. At first it did not move. The metal clung to the frame, stuck by years of pressure. Nora planted her feet, gripped the ring with both hands, and tugged again. The lid lifted with a loud groan. A breath of air rushed out, cold enough to raise goosebumps on her arms. The smell that followed was not damp like the basement. It was sharper, like old smoke and something bitter. Nora held the flashlight over the opening. A narrow set of wooden steps led down into darkness. The steps looked too clean for something sealed for years. Not freshly built, but not rotted. The wood was dark and smooth, like it had been used. Used recently. Nora's throat tightened. She told herself she was being dramatic. Old houses had odd features. Maybe the last owner stored things down there. Maybe it was an old root cellar. But the cold air continued to rise, steady and strong, as if something below was pulling it up. Nora stood and looked around the room. The house was silent. Outside, she heard a car pass on the road, then nothing again. She should have closed the trapdoor and called someone. But she had not built her life on caution. She had built it on decisions. She took the flashlight, aimed it down, and stepped onto the first stair. The wood held her weight. She went down slowly, one step at a time, the beam of light shaking slightly in her hand. The stairs ended in a small space with stone walls. The ceiling was low enough that she had to duck. The air was colder here, and it felt thicker, like it carried old secrets. The beam swept across the room. It was not a cellar. It was a tunnel entrance. A narrow passage cut through the stone, leading away from the house. The floor was packed dirt, smooth in the middle like footsteps had worn it down. Along the wall, someone had placed old lantern hooks, though the lanterns were gone. Nora's mouth went dry. She moved forward, crouching slightly. The tunnel was tight but passable. After several steps, she saw something else that made her stop. Scratches on the stone. Not random. Lines, repeated, like markings. Some were faded. Some looked newer. Nora reached out and traced one. Her glove brushed over the groove. A tiny bit of fresh dust came away. Someone had been here. Her mind tried to place it in a normal box. Maybe kids. Maybe a person hiding things. Maybe an old storm shelter that connected to another house. Then her flashlight beam hit a wooden plank set into the tunnel wall, like a door that had been built sideways to block off a section. The wood looked old, but it had a modern padlock. A padlock that was not rusted. Nora stood still, listening. Nothing but the faint sound of her own breathing. She took a step closer. On the plank, carved into the wood, were letters. They were rough, deep, and uneven, like someone had used a knife with a shaking hand. Keep out. Under it, smaller words had been carved, almost like a warning to the person who made the first message. Not safe. Nora swallowed. Her pulse beat hard in her ears. This was no longer interesting. This was wrong. She should turn around. She should leave and call the police. But her eyes stayed on the padlock. It looked like the kind sold at any hardware store. It was new enough to shine. New enough to mean that someone had locked it recently. Nora backed up, intending to return to the stairs. Then her flashlight beam caught something on the tunnel floor. A small scrap of paper, folded and damp at the edges. She picked it up and opened it carefully. The paper was stained, but the writing was readable. It was a messy note, written in dark ink. If you found this, do not trust anyone on Bramble Lane. Nora's skin prickled. She read it again, slower. Do not trust anyone on Bramble Lane. A sound came from above, faint but clear. A footstep. Nora snapped her head toward the stairs. The opening at the top was a dark square, and she could see a thin strip of living room light like a pale line. Another footstep. Closer. Someone was walking in her house. Nora turned off the flashlight instantly, and darkness wrapped around her like a heavy blanket. She held her breath. In the silence, she heard the soft creak of floorboards. The floorboards she had been pulling up. Whoever it was had noticed the opening. A shadow crossed the light at the top of the stairs, blocking it for a moment. Nora's heart slammed against her ribs. She pressed herself against the cold stone wall of the tunnel entrance. She heard a low voice, barely above a whisper. Hello. The voice was a man's voice. Calm, like he expected someone to answer. Nora did not move. The voice came again. I know someone's down there. Nora's mind raced. She could not climb the stairs without being seen. She could not stay here if the person came down. The tunnel could be an escape, but the locked plank blocked the way forward. She tightened her grip on the note, crumpling it slightly. The man's footsteps shifted. She heard metal scrape lightly against wood above, like someone testing the trapdoor edge. Then the man spoke again, and this time his tone changed, losing its calm. You should not have opened that. Nora's throat tightened so hard it hurt. The light at the top of the stairs grew brighter, as if the man had aimed a flashlight down. A beam of light stabbed into the darkness and swept across the stone wall near her. Nora pressed herself flatter, barely breathing. The beam moved again, slower, searching. Then it paused, holding steady on the packed dirt floor. On her footprints. Nora's stomach dropped. She had left a trail. The man chuckled softly, not amused, but certain. Found you, he said. The first step creaked. He was coming down. Nora squeezed her eyes shut for half a second, then opened them. She had seconds, not minutes. She could not fight him in this narrow space. She could not climb past him. She could only go forward. Her gaze snapped to the wooden plank door with the padlock. Keep out. Not safe. She did not care. She ran crouched through the tunnel, boots thudding softly on the dirt. Behind her, the man's steps sped up, wood groaning as he descended. Nora reached the plank. She grabbed the padlock and yanked. It held firm. She fumbled in her pocket for her keys, hands shaking. Footsteps hit the stone floor behind her. The man was now in the tunnel. Nora jammed a key into the lock. Wrong one. She tried another. Wrong again. The man's voice echoed down the passage, calm again, like he was speaking to a child. You do not understand what you just stepped into. Nora found the right key. She twisted. The padlock clicked open. She ripped it free and shoved the plank door with her shoulder. It swung inward, scraping the dirt. A rush of colder air poured out, and with it came a sound Nora could not explain at first. A low hum. Not mechanical, not natural. Like something deep underground was awake and breathing. Nora stepped through, raising her flashlight again. The beam landed on a long corridor that widened after a few feet. The walls were smoother here, reinforced with old wood beams. And on the ground, scattered like dead leaves, were dozens of small objects that made Nora's blood run cold. Children's shoes. Small shirts. A broken toy car. And at the far end, nailed to a post, was a sign written in red paint. Welcome home. Nora took one step back, shock freezing her legs. Behind her, the man entered the doorway. His flashlight beam swept the floor and stopped on the scattered items. He sighed, like someone tired of being discovered. Then he said, very softly, "Now the town will know." Nora's voice finally came out, thin and shaking. "What is this place?" The man did not answer. He moved closer, blocking the doorway behind her. Nora realized with sudden terror that she had locked herself into the wrong kind of secret. Outside the tunnel, above them, the town looked quiet and normal. But underneath Bramble Lane, something had been hiding for a long time. And Nora had just opened the door. Nora's mind screamed at her to run, but her body refused to move. The narrow corridor felt tighter now, like the walls had shifted closer. The hum beneath the floor continued, steady and deep, pressing against her ears. The man stood a few steps behind her, blocking the way back. His face stayed half hidden in shadow, but his posture was relaxed, almost patient. "This is not what it looks like," he said. Nora laughed once, sharp and breathless. "You have children's things nailed to a tunnel wall." "They are reminders," the man replied. "Not trophies. That does not make it better." He sighed again and lowered his flashlight. "You were never supposed to find this place. The house was sold too fast. That was a mistake." Nora tightened her grip on the flashlight. Her heart was still racing, but fear slowly shifted into anger. "You broke into my house." The man tilted his head. "No. You broke into ours." "Ours," Nora repeated. "Yes. The town's." He stepped aside slightly, enough to show the path behind him but not enough for her to pass. Bramble Lane was built over something old. Something the town decided to keep buried. This tunnel is part of that decision. Nora looked past him, up toward the faint square of light where the living room waited. That world felt very far away now. Then why the lock? Why the warning? "Because some truths rot when exposed," he said. "And some wake up." The hum grew louder for a moment, then settled again. Nora swallowed. "What wakes up?" The man did not answer. Instead, he turned and walked deeper into the corridor, motioning for her to follow. "You came this far. You deserve to see the rest. I do not trust you." "You already do," he said calmly. "Otherwise you would have tried to run past me." He was right, and she hated that. Nora followed at a careful distance. The corridor widened into a larger chamber. Wooden beams crossed the ceiling, and old lamps hung from hooks along the walls. Some lamps were modern, plugged into wires that ran along the beams. The light here was soft and yellow. In the center of the chamber stood a long table covered in maps, notebooks, and old photographs. On the walls, pinned carefully in rows, were newspaper clippings. Nora stepped closer and read a headline. "Local girl missing after storm." Another read. "Search called off after third week." Her stomach twisted. "These are from decades ago." "Yes. And these," she said, pointing to newer clippings. "They are recent." The man nodded. "Every few years, the cycle repeats." "What cycle?" He leaned against the table. "The ground beneath this town is not stable. Not in the way people think. Long before houses were built here, there was a natural chamber underground. Water moved through it. Air moved through it. Over time, people used it for shelter, then storage, then hiding." "Hiding what?" "Hiding from what they feared," he replied. "And hiding what they feared others would find." Nora picked up one of the notebooks. Inside were names, dates, notes written in different handwriting styles. Some entries were careful. Others looked rushed. "These are records," she said. "Of people." "Of watchers," the man corrected. "The town chose a few to guard the underground. To make sure nothing spread, nothing collapsed, nothing escaped." "Escaped," Nora echoed. He met her eyes for the first time. His gaze was tired, heavy with years of responsibility. "There is something down here that releases gases when disturbed. It affects the mind. Makes people confused, drawn, careless. In the past, people wandered into the tunnels and did not find their way back." Nora felt cold all over. "You are saying the town let people die?" "No," he said firmly. "The town learned. It sealed what it could. It placed guards. It watched. And the children's things." His jaw tightened. "Belonged to those who were saved." "Saved," she repeated, disbelief thick in her voice. They were found before it was too late, he said. But after exposure, they could not return home safely. Not without questions. Nora shook her head. That is not saving. That is stealing. You do not understand what exposure does, he snapped, then caught himself. He lowered his voice again. People forget. People break. We kept them safe. Where are they now? He looked away. The hum shifted again, stronger this time. A vibration ran through the floor. Dust drifted from the beams above. Nora stepped back. What was that? The man straightened. That is why this place must stay hidden. Construction above has disturbed the chamber. Your renovation work made it worse. Nora's chest tightened. You are blaming me. I am stating facts, he said. Every nail you pulled loosened pressure. Every board you lifted changed airflow. The hum rose again, louder now, like a distant engine. Nora felt dizzy for a moment. She pressed a hand to the table. I need air. You need to leave, the man agreed. But you cannot leave with knowledge like this. Not yet. Let me guess, she said bitterly. You want me to join your little group. Not little, he said. And not optional. The ground trembled harder this time. A low crack echoed through the chamber. Nora's fear turned sharp and focused. Something is breaking. Yes. What happens if it does? The man hesitated. The chamber releases everything it has built up. Gas, pressure, memories. The town above experiences confusion, panic, illness, and death. In extreme cases, he admitted. Nora stared at him. You have known this for years. And we have managed it for years, he said. Until now. The hum spiked into a deep roar. A beam overhead groaned. Nora grabbed his arm. What do? We seal the inner chamber, he said. But the access point is unstable. Where? He pointed to a reinforced tunnel branching off from the chamber. That way. They ran. The air grew colder as they moved, breath-fogging. The tunnel walls here were damp, slick with moisture. Nora slipped once but caught herself. They reached a heavy metal door embedded in the stone. Thick bolts lined its edges. The man began turning a wheel handle. This door controls airflow. The hum surged, shaking the tunnel. Nora's head spun. She felt a strange pull, like the tunnel wanted her attention. Images flickered at the edge of her vision. Faces. Voices. She shook her head hard. Do not breathe deeply, the man warned. Stay focused. The wheel stuck halfway. The metal screamed in protest. It is jammed, he said. Then force it. I am trying. Another crack echoed, closer now. Dust rained down. Nora grabbed the wheel and pulled with him. Her muscles burned. The wheel moved an inch, then another. The hum dropped suddenly, cutting off like a held breath. Silence followed, thick and heavy. Nora sagged against the wall, gasping shallow breaths. Is it over? For now, he said. They stood there, listening. Slowly, the ground stilled. Nora wiped her face. Her hands were shaking. This is insane. People deserve to know. And panic the town, he countered. Bring reporters, diggers, investors. Collapse everything we built to contain it. She looked at him. You built a prison underground and called it protection. We built a barrier, he said, between the surface and something that should not be touched. Nora thought of the note. Do not trust anyone on Bramble Lane. Who wrote that? She asked. He hesitated. Someone who wanted to leave. And did they? No. The word hit hard. Nora stepped back. I am not staying here. You cannot just walk away. I can, she said. And I will. But not before making sure this ends. He studied her, searching her face. You would destroy the town. I would save it, she replied. From people like you. The hum began again, faint but growing. The man's face changed. Fear crept in where certainty had been. You do not know how to control it. Then teach me, she said. Or move. He looked at the tunnel behind her, then back at the door. Finally, he nodded once. There is one more chamber, he said quietly. The source. If you see it, you will understand why we hid it. Take me there, Nora said. He led her down the final passage. The air grew heavier with each step. The hum became a presence, pressing into her thoughts. They reached a wide opening. Nora lifted her flashlight. The beam revealed a massive underground cavity, walls glistening with mineral veins. At its center, surrounded by broken stone, was a dark opening that pulsed faintly, like a slow heartbeat. And around it, carved into the rock itself, were symbols and words left by generations of hands. Warnings, promises, and one message carved deeper than the rest. It never stays asleep. Nora felt tears sting her eyes, not from fear but from the weight of it all. This is what you have been protecting, she whispered. The hum surged, louder than ever. And far above them, on Bramble Lane, lights flickered on and off as the town began to stir. The hum filled Nora's chest like a second heartbeat. It was no longer just a sound. It felt alive, pressing against her thoughts, tugging at memories she had buried and emotions she had never named. The air shimmered slightly around the dark opening in the stone, as if the space itself was bending. The man stepped back, fear finally clear on his face. Do not stand too close. Nora did not move. Her eyes stayed fixed on the pulsing opening. This is not gas, she said slowly. Not just gas. No, he admitted. It carries more than air. Memories, Nora said. Regret. Fear. He nodded. It amplifies what already exists in people. The weak lose themselves. The broken break further. And the rest, Nora said, her voice steady now. Learn the truth. The hum spiked again. A wave of pressure rolled through the chamber. Nora staggered, grabbing a stone edge to keep her balance. For a moment, images flooded her mind. Her first failed flip. The nights she slept in her car. The fear of losing control. She clenched her jaw and pushed back. I am not afraid of it, she said. I am afraid of what you have done because of it. The man shook his head. You think we wanted this burden? Generations stood watch here. People lost sleep, lost lives. And others lost their freedom, Nora shot back. The stone beneath them trembled harder. Dust rained down in thick sheets now. Somewhere above, a crack echoed through the earth, sharp and final. Nora looked up. That was not below us. The man's eyes widened. That was the surface. They ran. The return through the tunnels felt longer, the air heavier. As they climbed the wooden stairs beneath Nora's living room, the house creaked like it was alive and afraid. When Nora pushed the trapdoor open, she froze. Her living room was full of people. Leah stood near the window, pale and shaking. Two older men Nora had seen at the diner stood by the wall. A woman with gray hair clutched a radio. And near the center of the room stood the town sheriff, his hand resting on his belt. All eyes turned to Nora. Leah whispered, I told them the house had stories. The sheriff stepped forward. Ma'am, we received reports of tremors and strange sounds. People say you were digging. Nora climbed out fully and stood up. Dirt streaked her clothes. Her face was calm. Yes, she said. I was. The hum surged again, strong enough that everyone felt it this time. A few people cried out. The lights flickered. The older man from the tunnel stepped into view behind Nora. The room went silent. The gray-haired woman gasped. You were not supposed to bring her down there. Nora turned slowly. So you all know. No one answered. The sheriff's voice hardened. You should explain. I will, Nora said. She took a breath and raised her voice. This town is built over something dangerous. Something that affects the mind. Instead of telling the truth, you hid it. You watched. You decided who deserved answers and who did not. That is not fair, one of the men snapped. We protected this place. You protected your control, Nora said. You let people disappear. You let families grieve without answers. The hum rose into a deep roar. Outside, a distant crash echoed as something collapsed. Leah covered her ears. Make it stop. Nora looked at the man beside her. The chamber is unstable. Your silence is making it worse. The sheriff looked between them. Is this true? The gray-haired woman sank into a chair. Yes. The word felt heavy in the room. Another tremor shook the house. A crack split across the ceiling, thin but spreading. Nora moved fast. She grabbed a chair and slammed it against the floorboards where the trapdoor had been. We seal the tunnel now. You cannot, the man said urgently. Pressure needs release. And it needs truth, Nora replied. The hum feeds on fear and secrecy. She looked at the people in the room. You want it to stop. Then listen. The hum pulsed again, then wavered, like it was waiting. Nora spoke louder, steady and clear. She told them everything. The tunnels. The chamber. The gas. The missing people. The watchers. The lies. With each truth spoken, the hum softened. The sheriff removed his hat. We should have known. The older men bowed their heads. Leah wiped tears from her face. Nora's voice did not shake. You still have a choice. Seal it with honesty, or let it tear this place apart. Silence followed. Then the gray-haired woman stood. Open the town hall. Call everyone. The man from the tunnel stared at her. You cannot expose this. We already failed by hiding it, she said. Enough. The hum dropped lower, losing strength. They worked fast. Word spread through Bramble Lane like fire. People gathered in the square, fear and confusion thick in the air. The ground trembled once more, then steadied. Nora stood on the steps of the hall and spoke again. She did not soften the truth. She did not exaggerate it. She simply told it. The hum faded into a low echo beneath their feet. By morning, the tremors had stopped. The tunnels were sealed properly, monitored openly, and studied with care. Families received answers. Names were spoken aloud after decades of silence. The man who had guarded the tunnels turned himself in. He did not fight it. Weeks later, Nora stood in her finished living room. The floor was solid now, sealed with reinforced steel beneath the wood. Sunlight filled the space. Leah leaned against the doorway. You could sell this place for a lot. Nora smiled faintly. I am not flipping it. No. I am staying, Nora said. Someone should. Outside, Bramble Lane looked the same as it always had. Quiet. Ordinary. But beneath it, the truth rested, no longer hidden, no longer hungry. And the town slept better because of it.